Hello, everyone. Sorry we're starting a little bit late tonight. I hope that didn't throw anybody off. I was having some dinner with some family members and needed to help clean up the table, of course, before I came back here to record for you. So welcome. And if you're just joining us for the first time, we are reading The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe from C.S. Lewis's The Chronicles of Narnia. Every night, every weeknight before bed, to tuck in all of our Trek campers. So tonight we are reading chapter 8. And if you're just joining us, what's happened so far is our 4 children have met this couple named Mr. and Mrs. Beaver, a pair of beavers, and they've had a delicious dinner with them in their beaver den. And this chapter is called What Happened After Dinner. "And now," said Lucy, "do please tell us what's happened to Mr. Tumnus." "Ah, that's bad," said Mr. Beaver, shaking his head. "That's a very, very bad business. There's no doubt he was taken off by the police. I got that from a bird who saw it done." "But where's he been taken to?" asked Lucy. "Well, they were headed northward when they were last seen, and we all know what that means." "No, we don't," said Susan. Mr. Beaver shook his head in a very gloomy fashion. "I'm afraid it means they were taking him to her house," he said. "But what'll they do to him, Mr. Beaver?" gasped Lucy. "Well," said Mr. Beaver, "you can't exactly say for sure, but there's not many taken in there that ever comes out again. Statues. All full of statues, they say it is. In the courtyard and up the stairs and in the hall. People she's turned," he paused and shuddered, "turned to stone." "But Mr. Beaver," said Lucy, "can't we? We must do something to save him. It's too dreadful, and it's all on my account." "I don't doubt you could save him if you could, dearie," said Mrs. Beaver. "But you'd no chance of getting into that house against her will and ever coming out alive." "Couldn't we have some stratagem?" said Peter. Couldn't we dress up as something or pretend to be, peddlers or anything and watch till she was gone out? Or, hang it, there must be some way. This fawn saved my sister at his own risk, Mr. Beaver. We can't just leave him to have that done to him." "It's no good, son of Adam," said Mr. Beaver. "No good you're trying, of all people. But now that Aslan is on the move—" "Oh, yes, tell us about Aslan," said several voices at once. For once again that strange feeling, like the first signs of spring, like good news, had come over them. "Who is Aslan?" asked Susan. "Aslan," said Mr. Beaver. "Why, don't you know? He's the king. He's the lord of the whole wood. Not often here, you understand. Never in my time or my father's time. But word has reached us that he's come back. He is in Narnia at this moment. He'll settle the White Witch all right. It is he, not you, that will save Mr. Tumnus. She won't turn him into stone too," said Edmund. "Lord love you, son of Adam, what a simple thing to say," answered Mr. Beaver with a great laugh. "Turn him to stone. If she can stand on her own 2 feet and look him in the face, there'll be the most she can do, and more than I expect of her. No, he'll put all to rights, as it says in an old rhyme in these parts. Wrong will be right when Aslan comes in sight. At the sound of his roar, sorrows will be no more. When he bares his teeth, winter meets its death. When he shakes his mane, we shall have spring again." Doesn't exactly rhyme. "You'll understand when you see him." "But shall we see him?" asked Susan. "Why, daughter of Eve, that's why I brought you here for. I'm to lead you to where you shall meet him," said Mr. Beaver. Is he a man?" asked Lucy. Aslan a man, said Mr. Beaver sternly. Certainly not. I tell you, he's the king of the wood and the son of the great emperor beyond the sea. Don't you know who is the king of beasts? Aslan is a lion, the great lion. Oh, said Susan. I thought he was a man. Is he quite safe? I shall feel rather nervous about meeting a lion. That you will, dearie, and no mistake, said Mrs. Beaver. If there's anyone who can appear before Aslan without their knees knocking, they're either braver than most or else just silly. Then he isn't safe, said Lucy. Safe, said Mr. Beaver. Don't you hear what Mrs. Beaver tells you? Who said anything about safe? Of course he isn't safe. But he's good. He's the king, I tell you. I'm longing to see him, said Mr. Beaver. I said Peter, even if I do feel frightened when it comes to the point. That's right, son of Adam, said Mr. Beaver, bringing his paw down on the table with a crash that made all the cups and saucers rattle. And so you shall. Word has been sent that you are to meet him tomorrow, if you can, at the stone table. Where's that? Said Lucy. I'll show you. Oh, we've got a few people tuning in. Yeah, Bessie and Jess, hello. Welcome back. It's so good to see you. How was your day today? Let me know in the comments. I'll show you, said Mr. Beaver. It's down the river, good step from here. I'll take you to it. But meanwhile, what about poor Mr. Tumnus? Said Lucy. The quickest way you can help him is by going to meet Aslan, said Mr. Beaver. Once he's with us, then we can begin doing things. Not that we don't need you, too. That's another of the old rhymes. When Adam's flesh and Adam's bone sits at Cair Paravel throne, the evil time will be over and done. Sorry, it's turning into a bit of a Western accent. So things must be drawn near their end now. He's come and you've come. We've heard of Aslan coming into these parts before, long ago. Nobody can say when. But there's never been any of your race here before. That's what I don't understand, Mr. Beaver, said Peter. I mean, isn't the witch herself human? She'd like us to believe it, said Mr. Beaver, and it's on that she bases her claim to be queen. But she's no daughter of Eve. She comes of your father Adam's. Here Mr. Beaver bowed. Your father Adam's first wife, they called her Lilith, and she was one of the jinn. That's what she comes from on one side. And on the other, she comes of the giants. No, there isn't a drop of real human blood in the witch. That's why she's all bad through, Mr. Beaver, said Mrs. Beaver. True enough, Mrs. Beaver, he replied. There may be two views about humans, meaning no offense to the present company, but there's no two views about things that look like humans and aren't. I've known good dwarfs, said Mrs. Beaver. So have I, now that you come to speak of it, said her husband, but precious few, and they were the ones least like men. But in general, take my advice, when you meet anything that's going to be human and isn't, or used to be human and isn't, you keep your eyes on it and feel for your hatchet. And that's why the witch is always on the lookout for any humans in Narnia. She's been watching you this many a year, and if she knew there were 4 of you, she'd be more dangerous still. What's that to do with it? Asked Peter. Because of another prophecy, said Mr. Beaver. Down at Cair Paravel, that's the castle on the seacoast down at the mouth of this river, which ought to be the capital of the whole country if all was as it should be. Down at Cair Paravel, there are 4 thrones, and it's a saying in Narnia, time out of mind, that when 2 sons of Adam and 2 daughters of Eve sit in those 4 thrones, Then it will be the end of not only the White Witch's reign, but of her life. And that is why we had to be so cautious as we came along. For if she knew about you four, your lives wouldn't be worth a shake of my whiskers." All of the children had been attending so hard to what Mr. Beaver was telling them that they had noticed nothing else for a long time. Then, during the moment of silence that followed his last remark, Lucy suddenly said, "I say, where's Edmund?" There was a dreadful pause, and then everyone began asking, "Who saw him last? How long has he been missing? Is he outside?" And then all rushed to the door and looked out. The snow was falling thickly and steadily. The green ice of the pool had vanished under a thick white blanket, and from where the little house stood in the center of the dam, you could hardly see either bank. Out they went, plunging well over their ankles into the soft new snow, and went round the house in every direction. "Edmund! Edmund!" they called, till they were hoarse. But the silently falling snow seemed to muffle their voices, and there was not even an echo in answer. "How perfectly dreadful," said Susan, as they at last came back in despair. "Oh, how I wish we'd never come." "What are we to do, Mr. Beaver?" said Peter. "Do?" said Mr. Beaver, who was already putting his snow boots on. "Do? We must be off at once. We haven't a moment to spare." "We better divide into 4 search parties," said Peter, "and go all in different directions. Whoever finds him must come back here at once and—" "Search parties, son of Adam," said Mr. Beaver. "What for?" "Why, to look for Edmund, of course." "There's no point in looking for him," said Mr. Beaver. Hello, hello. Oh, yes, you guys logged in under a new login. I miss you guys too. You know, I've been working at a day camp these last 3 weeks, the City of Abbotsford Day Camp, and spending a lot of time with kids, doing crafts and activities, trying to teach them, friendship bracelets and all the things we do at Trek, but it's just not the same. I miss being with you guys. I miss being outdoors and fires and night watch, all the good stuff. So fun to get to have this time together. I really miss you guys too. All right, where did we leave off? Oh, yeah. "What do you mean?" said Susan. "He can't be far away yet. We've got to find him. What do you mean when you say there's no use looking for him?" "The reason there's no use looking," said Mr. Beaver, "is that we already know where he's gone." Everyone stared in amazement. "Don't you understand?" said Mr. Beaver. "He's gone to her, to the White Witch. He's betrayed us all." "Oh, surely. Oh, really?" said Susan. "He can't have done that." "Can't he?" said Mr. Beaver, looking very hard at the 3 children, and everything they wanted to say died on their lips, for each felt suddenly quite certain inside that this was exactly what Edmund had done. "But will he know the way?" said Peter. "Has he been in this country before?" asked Mr. Beaver. "Has he ever been here alone?" "Yes," said Lucy, almost in a whisper. "I'm afraid he has." "And did he tell you what he'd done or who he'd met?" "Well, no, he didn't," said Lucy. "Then mark my words," said Mr. Beaver. "He has already met the White Witch and joined her side and been told where she lives. I didn't like to mention it before, he being your brother and all, but the moment I set eyes on that brother of yours, I said to myself, treacherous. He had the look of one who had been with the witch and eaten her food. You can always tell them if you've lived in Narnia long enough. Something about their eyes." "All the same," said Peter in a rather choking voice, "we still have to go and look for him. He is our brother after all, even if he is rather a little beast, and he's only a kid." "Go to the witch's house," said Mrs. Beaver. "Don't you see that The only chance of saving either him or yourselves is to keep away from her." "How do you mean?" said Lucy. "Why, all she wants is to get the four of you. She's thinking all the time of those 4 thrones at Cair Paravel. Once you were all 4 inside her house, her job would be done. And there'd be 4 new statues in her collection before you had time to speak. But she'll keep him alive as long as he's the only one she's got, because she'll want to use him as a decoy, as bait to catch the rest of you with." "Oh, can no one help us?" wailed Lucy. "Only Aslan," said Mr. Beaver. "We must go on and meet him. That's our only chance now." "It seems to me, my dears," said Mrs. Beaver, "that it's very important to know just when he slipped away. How much can he tell her depends on how much he heard. For instance, had we started talking of Aslan before he left? If not, then we might do very well, for she won't know that Aslan has come to Narnia, or that we are meeting him, and will be quite off her guard as far as that is concerned." "I don't remember his being here when we were talking about Aslan," began Peter, but Lucy interrupted him. "Oh, yes, he was," she said miserably. "Don't you remember? It was he who asked whether the witch couldn't turn Aslan into stone too." "So he did, by Jove," said Peter. "Just the sort of thing he would say too." "Worse and worse," said Mr. Beaver. "And the next thing is this. Was he here still when I told you that the place for meeting Aslan was the stone table?" And of course, no one knew the answer to this question. "Because if he was," continued Mr. Beaver, "then she'll simply sledge down that direction and get between us and the stone table and catch us on our way down. In fact, we shall be cut off from Aslan." "But that isn't what she'll do first," said Mrs. Beaver. "Not if I know her. The moment that Edmund tells her that we're all here, she'll set out to catch us this very night. And if he's been gone about half an hour, she'll be here in about another 20 minutes. "You're right, Mrs. Beaver," said her husband. "We must all get away from here. There's not a moment to lose." End of chapter 8. Woo! So we've got the plot thickens. We've got White Witch and Edmund possibly after the other children and the beavers. What do we think of Edmund? Is he a bit of a sneak, or is it understandable because he had some of that magic Turkish delight? I don't know. Seems like a bit of a brat to me. Oh, you guys. Oh, I wish. Oh, well, let's see. We have been sleeping in a tent with sleeping bags. So fun. Have you guys been tenting all week? And is it a tent or is it a shelter that you built after watching Jordan's video? Because I don't know how comfy those ones looked, but I'd be certainly impressed. Make sure if you guys take a picture of yourselves doing any activities or doing any trek or camping things, if you post it online or send it to Trek, we're going to put it together into like a little mini camp slideshow for the end of the week if we get enough. So, or the end of week 3. So let us know. Send them our way. Well, it was so nice to see you guys and to spend this little time together. Sorry again that I was a little bit late today. But tomorrow we'll be picking up with chapter 9, which is going to be called In the Witch's House. So that will be exciting. Oh, yeah. And I was wondering, Vassie and Jess, have you guys read Narnia before? Is this your first time listening? Let me know, because I'm curious to see if you're just enjoying a favorite story or if it's all new for you. I have read the Chronicles of Narnia a while ago, but it's been a while since I've revisited The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So there's some details that I've forgotten. Anyways, thanks for joining in, and I will see you guys tomorrow night. Talk soon.